Overdrive, today we review the new Toyota Innova with a hybrid powertrain. We check out yet another retro factory custom bike from Jawa Motorcycles and drive a semi-electrified Maserati SUV. Hello and welcome to Overdrive, your weekly dose of everything auto. I am Soini Dutt. Now, Toyota India has decided to move a step towards carbon neutrality by launching the Innova, which now comes with a hybrid powertrain. What's also new is that the Innova will only be available with a petrol option. It also comes with enhanced new features, including the ADAS tech.
Now the Innova HyCross is now a hybrid, which by itself is a big step away from the diesel Innovas that you've become so used to. But it must be said that again, like the rest of the car, it kind of works. So the 186 PS, it feels like 186 PS. You don't feel that lack of mid-range torque all that much. You only feel it, say, at higher speeds on the highway, where you want to make that fast overtake or just close gap. So there you do miss that strong mid-range diesel punch. But aside from that, in most other conditions, that EV powertrain, the 1.31 kilowatt-hour battery that sits underneath, that's doing a very good job of, accentuating that 2-liter petrol engine. So in regular slow-moving traffic, that electric motor, which is powered by this 1.31 kilowatt-hour battery pack, is doing a great job. So you, as with all these Toyota systems, hybrid systems, you start off almost always on electric power. So you have that typical, very easily accessible torque that an EV has. So it just moves off the line very cleanly, quite briskly in fact. And then of course the petrol motor kicks in, it does so seamlessly, quite seamlessly. There's no loud clatters or clangs coming in. So that is very good. And then when you do pick up speed like we are right now, you notice that the CVT is also quite intuitively tuned. So of course when you step on the gas, there is that drone, that CVT drone, but there's also forward motion, so that dissociation is not that much. So yeah, you do have a clean linear power band as with most of these hybrids. So it really does make making progress quite easy. Yeah, you might find it to be quite different from that typical diesel performance with that, where you ride that wave of mid-range torque. It's different from that. You have to drive the HyCross a bit differently, let it build speed, let the electric motor do its thing. But you do notice that there is enough performance. The 0 to 100 time of 9.5 seconds seems fairly believable. So it's not a slow car by any means. So it'll keep up in traffic. It'll do your highway road trips pretty easily. And then of course, the big advantage of this is that 21.1 kilometer per liter fuel efficiency. Of course, in the real world, you'll get less than that. We've done some very heavy driving and we're still getting 15, which is a big achievement considering how big this car is and how heavy it is.
The Eco, Normal and Power modes don't alter outputs, so even in the most conservative setting, the HyCross is perfectly usable. There is an S gearbox mode that brings a touch more urgency in the way the HyCross moves, but a braking mode for the gearbox would have been more useful. There is some engine braking effect built into this powertrain, but the near one-pedal function that this provides in the Hyrider would have been a good fit for the HyCross too. Far from feeling wallowy, the new Innova feels quite adept around a winding road. Body roll is kept in check and the long, wide car does a good job of hiding its mass here, as well as, if not better than, similarly sized SUVs.
Now this second row is really where you want to be in the Innova HyCross. And moving to the monocoque architecture, there have been some changes. The most notable of which is that it can't quite take those low speed sharp bumps as well as the Crista could. So there is some bit of sharpness which is typical of these monocoque SUVs, if you will, comes through. But other than that, once you've picked up speed, once the road smoothens out, especially on a highway like this, the HyCross feels every bit like an Innova should. So as a long distance machine, the HyCross is, at least in terms of ride quality, as good as an Innova has ever been. Toyota has really gone to town with the features in this second row. So you get this powered ottoman, of course, for that added comfort. Although with the battery pack now placed under the front seats, there's a bit less legroom, if you will. Of course, the knee room and the headroom is good enough still. And then you can recline this seat back as well. And you can recline it to quite an extreme angle. So you can lie pretty much flat. And then we come to the features that are on offer. So you have a specific climate zone for the second and the third row. You get this ambient lighting. You get this panoramic sunroof. And then of course you have this center console where, Like now we put the phone, these snacks. And then of course there's a great addition for India, these sunshades. So as a comfortable place to spend time in, the Innova HyCross really has taken a significant step forward in the second row.
The cabin is nothing like the simple, functional ones we've seen before in an Innova. The horizontally themed dash is again quite SUV-like, with its large, freestanding central screen and more ergonomic layout. The quality of materials have also improved noticeably, with the soft brown surfaces on the dash face and doors, as well as the quilted upholstery. The switchgear feels better damped, and the hard plastics, though still with that typical hard-wearing texture you are accustomed to in a Toyota, seem better tempered by the new design. There's quite a long list of features to go with this.
Now the shift to a monocoque architecture has been most useful to the Innova in terms of the amount of space you now get in the third row. To start with, the floor has been lowered, which means Toyota has been able to raise this third row. So it means that it's a much more comfortable place to spend time in terms of where the hip point is. So you're not crouched down. Of course, you still sit in a knees up position, just not as much as before. But as you can see, there's not much under thigh support either. But overall, it's much better than what it was before. Now you can also recline this row of seats like this. And again, even in this position, it's quite comfortable. The angle of recline is not too extreme, it's just right. Now Toyota says that this space is good for 3 people, but to be honest, if 3 people were to sit here, they would have to be children, although you do get a full 3-point seat belt for the third passenger as well.
With all 3 rows up, there is about as much space for luggage as in the Crista, although you get a smaller hidden compartment under the floor for small items. Usefully, the third row seats now fold fully flat, opening up a significant 991 litres of boot space. The Toyota Innova HyCross is only about 20 mm longer and wider than the Crista, but of the same height. Despite these minor increases, the HyCross looks quite a bit more substantial in person, with the wider tracks, the 100 mm longer wheelbase and the shorter overhangs.
Now another big addition with the HyCross is that of level 2 ADAS. Now Toyota has tuned the system specifically for India, and in this very short time that we've tried it, it seems to work fairly usefully for our conditions. So for example, the adaptive cruise will quite easily manage to spot lane markings. It'll keep you in the straight line. It'll even handle those curves on our highways pretty naturally. It's the same with the lane departure system as well. That will also spot even fairly faint markings easily. And the intervention when you do cross over, which can sometimes be a bit scary in other cars, that's not the case here. The intervention is mild. You still get to know when the car wants you to take control back. So in that sense, the system is, at least in this early impression, it is a fairly intuitive one, and one that will aid your driving experience like it should.
The Toyota Innova HyCross will be an expensive proposition, considering that the Crista's diesel versions will be reintroduced to cater to that specific segment. But it is clear that this really is what a modern Innova should be. Yes, you lose some of the earlier defining traits like the diesel performance and the last degree of rough road ability, but that is replaced by a far more efficient as well as an easier, more relaxing experience, further enhanced by a generally more useful and feature-packed cabin and eye-catching looks.
Well, after watching this review, do you think that this MPV remains an Innova in its truest sense? Let us know in our YouTube channel in the comment section. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we'll tell you all about the Jawa 42 Bobber. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. As the factory custom bike, the 42 Bobber from the classic legends of Jawa motorcycles actually better than the Jawa Perak? It's time to find out.
Out here in India, classic themed modern motorcycles have been all the rage for quite a while. But what if you wanted a motorcycle that offered you something unique and it really stood out on the road? Well, that's where factory custom motorcycles come into play. And Jawa ESD, under the Classic Legends umbrella, well, they have a couple of options of this particular segment of motorcycle for you. But hold on. Jawa already has the Perak out there. So what is this, the 42 Bobber, doing out here? Now, although this bike is heavily based on the Perak, well, I'm wondering what's so unique about it. Well, we're here to find out. So let's get right to it.
The Bobber 42 still looks very much like the Jawa Perak. In fact, it's heavily based on the older bike.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing because it still looks outstanding and very eye-catching in my opinion. It's still got that awesome stretched out laid back vibe to it with that big 19-inch wheel up front, the bars that are bent backwards, the bar end mirrors, floating single seat, and that slick swing arm and curvy tail end. It's quite the same as the Perak, just with hints of modernity to it. The bobber gets livelier paint schemes, LED lighting all around, and there's no analog speedo and fuel gauge. Instead, the Bobber 42 gets an all-digital single-pod cluster that's borrowed from the Jawa Roadster model. And there's other bits thrown in on there as well, which alter the bike's ergonomics. Alright, so in terms of the ride position and ergonomics, well, the 42 Bobber is slightly different as compared to the Jawa Perak. Why? Because, well, first of all, you have a different shaped tank. The Perak has a teardrop shaped tank, and over here with the 42, the Bobber, you have nice recesses and even some tank grips for your knees. Then you have the slightly forward set foot pegs which alter your rider triangle when you get to the bars. The seat as well has been changed, and the suspension unit, the monoshock at the rear, has been softened a bit to take on bumps a little better. But how does this all translate out on the road? Let's find out. Now the riding position on this bike will have your arms and legs stretched out forward, which may look super cool to onlookers, but really it isn't the best over long stints in the saddle. This coupled with the 1458mm wheelbase means that this bike isn't a very agile handler. In true bobber fashion, the ride quality is stiff, which means that this bike can get quite choppy over terrain that isn't ultra smooth. Even small bumps send shocks through the seat, which many Indians won't really appreciate given our poor road conditions. Also, ground clearance is low and you'll be scraping the feelers the moment you take on a corner with even a bit of gusto, which brings me to the engine. The engine is the same 334cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder unit as the one on the Perak, and it comes in the same state of tune as well, producing 30 PS of power, 32 Nm of torque, and it comes mated to the same 6-speed gearbox. The engine still feels and sounds rough around the edges. It feels strained even around 4000 RPM, and that's when the fun really starts with this bike. Now, I like the fact that Jawa has been paying attention to its customers, and there is evidence of that on this bike as well. You see, with the Perak, they were told that the seat of that bike was rather uncomfortable, so Jawa opted for a different textured fabric and they tweaked the design of the seat around as well. They were also told that the Perak's tail lamp, which was positioned under that seat, well, the light couldn't be seen by road users once the luggage rack accessory was mounted on the rear fender. So they shifted the lights to the rear fender as well. The ABS and the rear suspension were altered to improve the ride quality of the bike as well. But has all this made the Bobber 42 altogether better than the Perak? Well, unfortunately, no, it hasn't. You see, the level of fit and finish still leaves a bit to be desired. And although paint quality is good, we've previously seen rivets and bolts fly off the Jawa before, and there's even evidence of that occurring again with this bike, which isn't very reassuring. Now, there are definitely a lot of aspects that Jawa still has to iron out when it comes to this motorcycle, but in terms of what it brings to the table, yes, well, if you are one of those takers that is really taken away with the whole factory custom element of it all, the design aspect, well, yes, this bike still looks crazy. It looks really nice, attractive, and this model in particular, with this paint scheme, this will set you back by 2,10,000 rupees, which is on par with the Perak as it stands currently. If you like the whole Perak aspect of the factory custom bobber, but wanted a slightly more modern take to the retro modern theme of it all, well, this one is the bike that you should be looking at.
Well, do you think yet another retro style motorcycle from Jawa Motorcycles, Classic Legends, was in need of the hour? Let us know in our comment section on our YouTube channel. We'll be back after a very short break to tell you all about the Maserati Levante GT Hybrid. Stay with us. You're watching. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, when you think of Maserati, you automatically think of sensuous design, Italian charm, and of course, you think of the rich heritage of cars with character. Now, Maserati Levante has done well for itself to incorporate all of that essence into an SUV body style. But just how much of that remains intact when it comes with a hybrid powertrain? Let's find out.
To start with, the Levante GT Hybrid Unlike the name suggests, is only a mild hybrid system that assists a 2-liter turbo petrol with a 48-volt alternator and an electric supercharger. It may be the entry point to the range, but still makes a healthy 330 PS and 450 Nm while still being 18% more efficient than the V6 in the higher Modena trim. The GT Hybrid is quick, but not blisteringly so. The 0 to 100 kmph time comes in 6 seconds and the top speed is 240 km an hour.
Now start driving the Levante GT Hybrid with this downsized engine and you realize that at least in the lower ICE or what is the equivalent of eco or normal modes, this motor is usual fare for what you would find in a luxury SUV such as this one. So it's quiet, it's refined, it's not too much noise coming into the cabin. And the electrification that's there, that e-boost from that electric supercharger does a great job of filling in the gaps in torque in the motor. So you have a linear, wide power band. So it's very easy to drive in these modes. And as always, that ZF 8-speed is just shuffling away in the background, rolling in those soft shifts. But once you dial it into sport mode, that's when the Levante GT Hybrid does a very good job of living up to that trident that's on the grille in front of it. Because immediately you notice that there's a sense of urgency that's come into this car. To start with, you can hear it, there's this piped in sound which does a fair job of mimicking, say, a V6 rumble, and it'll even burble and snap right at the top of the rev band when you lift off the gas or upshift. So that's already egging you on. But then the engine becomes much more energetic, it's much more eager to rev out, the throttle response is much sharper. And as you can see, making brisk progress is not very difficult at all. Which brings us to what really stands out when you drive the Levante GT Hybrid, which is the way this fairly large SUV handles a twisty bit of road. With the air suspension lowering down to a very useful height in the sport mode, you have just a bit of tilt and sway. It's nothing unnerving, far from it in fact. For example, the kind of speeds that you can carry when you're just skipping along a twisty bit of road is really quite endearing. There's a lot of grip coming through the car, so you can hold very high speeds in corners. The car stays perfectly stable. There's a little bit of twitching and skipping when you really push it hard, but it's more engaging than anything else. And again, sort of egging you on further is the steering. Okay, it feels a bit lifeless in the lesser modes, but put it into sport and there's genuine old school feedback coming through. So the steering weighs up, it moves around in your arms a bit. Not enough to maybe scare you or for us to call it kickback, but just enough to let you know exactly what the front of the car is doing. And now with the lighter engine, the smaller lighter engine, the front too feels really sharp and darty, so it's quite eager to tuck into a corner to sort of, hold its line well.
There are some blink and miss styling updates to go with the first wave of these electrified models from Maserati. So the red from the Maserati Trident is now gone, while the distinct 3 side ports too now have a blue highlight to them. The tail lamps have also been slightly revised to become sleeker with their LED light signature. It's good that the visual changes are limited because the Maserati Levante continues to be a stunner. Even in this plain white shade, the front with the caved-in grille and white lamps looks angry yet elegant. That it still looks contemporary and almost timeless is a great measure of how well this SUV was styled to begin with.
Now step inside the Levante GT Hybrid and you have the usual luxury car trimming. So everything that you look at and touch is covered in soft touch material. You have soft touch leather, these large swaths of wood veneer, these soft touch plastics everywhere where you look. But you know that the Levante has been around for a while now, and that shows in the general layout and design.
Some of the features that enhance the driving experience of the Levante GT Hybrid are soft closed doors, heated and cooled front seats, powered steering adjustment, an access mode for the air suspension, powered seats and a panoramic sunroof. You don't get ADAS, but there are most passive safety features you could want.
Now if you bought something like the Levante GT Hybrid, invariably you will spend a lot of time in the back seat. And to be honest, it would be unfair to expect a level of space and comfort here that is very similar to say a more upright full-size SUV. But the Levante does well for what it is. So while you don't have that much headroom if you are a tall adult, for me, I'm a medium-sized adult, 5'6" kind of is my height. For me, it's fine. Same with the amount of leg and knee room. In fact, that's quite a bit of it for me. So that is fine. But what we don't like is the design of this sort of seat here. You don't have that much underthigh support, but a bigger problem is this panel that sort of juts out. It sort of hurts you in the lower back, and while we don't like it, maybe some of you will like it. Having said that, the seats themselves hold you pretty well.
Priced at Rs 1.45 crore onwards, the Maserati Levante GT Hybrid has some serious contenders to face up against. It could have done with better interiors and maybe a touch more performance, but that's missing the point. Despite the downsizing and the electrification, the Levante GT Hybrid is brimming with character. It makes driving an event, even in an SUV, with the sheer connection you can build with it. And it looks stunning and keeps you comfortable while doing so. A true Maserati then.
Well, with that, we've run out of time on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.
मेरी गाड़ी पे